Hey guys, welcome to TST Garage. I'm Bart, and in this video, I have the pleasure of presenting to you the TST Industries Fender Eliminator for the 2021 and up Yamaha MT-09, and also the SP, as you see behind me. These parts will fit the SP and the standard version universally, so no worries there. I will walk you through some of the attributes of our product and then show you how to install it step by step. Now, every Fender Eliminator ditches the entire fender and therefore the lighting system that comes on the fender. So we'll have to do something about replacing the license plate light and the signals with our systems. In this module, we will only be portraying how to install a Fender Eliminator of your choice from TST Industries on your bike. We will subsequently make other videos that will show you how to install the signaling system on this bike. We will offer several different signaling systems and an integrated taillight. So look for those videos on our website or on our YouTube channel. All right, here in front of me, you see several different components. These are the sub-modules that build our Fender Eliminator product. Here you see the common component that is called the closeout. This, along with the stainless steel hardware that it comes with, closes out the hole left behind by the removal of the fender. It also enables pass-through of your key to open up your seat. Also has pass-through notches in it for lighting cables to go through, should you choose to use those. This is a CNC machined aluminum component, black anodized, beautiful textured and smooth finish to complement the lines and look of the bike very, very well. This is the component that comes in all of these different sets. It also comes by itself in a closeout product should you use maybe a different swing arm mounted Fender Eliminator or some homemade version. This will at least help you close out the hole left behind by the fender. Now you see that we do not have a hinge operated cover here or a grommet. We designed this slot to be very, very narrow, give you enough room to pass your key through and turn it. It's also off axis from the actual cylinder, so the cylinder will not take on any water. You will not have any deterioration of the action of the key cylinder, so no worries there. There's no need for additional complexity to these parts. This safeguards your cylinder and also is off axis. Should you get any water in here, it'll just drip down and out of your sub tray. No worries. All right, moving on. We do have three different versions of Fender Eliminator. We have the low mount that consists of this bracket, the closeout and its hardware. License plate gets mounted here, hole gets closed out, good to go. Now the rear mount version is available in two different variants. Here you see our flagship. It's a CNC machined aluminum version that has all the bells and whistles. It's adjustable, it's black anodized, it's beautiful. It couples with this mounting boss that mounts to your undertail and subsequently enables you to mount the hardware that will carry your license plate to the boss itself. Now the other version is just a stainless steel bracket that has been powder coated black for a nice stealthy look. It does the same job, except it doesn't enable adjustability, and it's a much simpler concept. This will save you a little bit of money over the flagship model, still do a very good job, but the choice is ultimately yours. In this particular video, we will be focusing on the installation method for the high mount version of the Fender Eliminator. We will be portraying both the adjustable and the standard version in a simplified fashion. I will show you how to do that in a very simple sequence of steps to follow. In the first step, we will be removing the license plate off the bike and retaining the hardware that is currently holding your license plate onto the bike. Should you need replacement hardware, we do sell these reflective license plate screws and also a nice accent kit that you could choose that has anodized aluminum washers and looks a little bit more minimal than this. It goes a lot nicer with our Fender Eliminator kits. Next, we will remove the seat. Following step, we will be removing this bracket that is screwed on with these 4mm Allen screws. All these have to come out. Please take note of the washers. Also take note how this goes back in. The actual latch mechanism is on the left side of the bike. This is how we will have to return it onto the bike. Next, we will grab a 10mm socket and loosen these nuts. All right, now we have the fender pretty loose. We'll have to find the fender lighting wiring. This is one of them. This is for the license plate light. I like to use a tiny flathead screwdriver to lift up on the locking feature, and that allows me to clear this connector from its mating side. Now, if you're going to be running a license plate light and you're using one of ours, red is positive, black is negative. If you're going to be reusing this portion of the connector, you will wire your red into the green and red wire and black into black. If you're going to be connecting into the bike side, then red will go into blue red, and then black will go into black. Now we need to snip off this zip tie here that connects all these wiring looms together. This stays on the bike. This gets unclipped. This is still the license plate light wire. Now we have these two wire sets in sheaths going to the black and white plugs. These are your connectors for the signals. You'll need to slip those off. The locking mechanism works as follows. There's an interference window here that goes onto a clip. You have to push this down to clear this out of the way and pull it out. Both of these are the same, so no worries there. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and take the nuts off all the way. When I get to this last one, I like to hold my fender from the bottom so it's suspended and it doesn't just fall off. I dropped the nut in there. I will have to find it after the disassembly. We have one more part here that is holding this fender on, and that's this little nub. What I'm going to use on this little fastener is the backside handle of a screwdriver. Just push it out, clears out, and now just wiggle this fender off. Make sure you don't snag any of these wires. And just heard my last fourth nut drop down, so I found it. We're good to go. Now we have our fender off. Let's see what we need to do about cable management here. I like to get this guy back in here under this clip. And now we are good to go to the next step. At this point, we're going to focus on installing the closeout on the bike. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, we do have these little reliefs cut into the closeout for the purpose of passing wires from the outside to the inside. So consider that in your approach when you're installing these parts. You may want to run your wires for your signals ahead of time. If your wires do not have these giant Yamaha connectors, then you'll probably be able to do it with the hardware on, but the closeout loose, whatever the case is. Just make sure you make the choices ahead of time. Before we actually install this part, we'll need to pull out this rubber grommet that is present here on the aft section of this hole. For that purpose, I'm going to grab needle nose pliers, and that just comes right out. No big deal. Nice fit, good to go. It actually keeps itself in position. All right. For the purpose of this installation, we will have 4 of these countersunk screws and 4 flange nuts. The screws go from the outside, from underneath up to the top. There is a washer plate on the inside. Make sure that you get your screw through the frame and also through that washer plate. Get that nut started onto this assembly. I like to keep holding the closeout on the undertail until I get at least 2 screws and nuts fastened together. After I get this all done by hand, I will be using a 3mm Allen from the outside and an 8mm socket on the nuts. All right, beautiful. Now, we will need to make access to these threaded holes under these fasteners here in order to hang our rear mount fender eliminator in this area. So a 4mm Allen will do the trick here. Quick note before we move forward. Our carrier boss is designed specifically to distribute the stress of carrying a license plate and perhaps a set of signals on this area in a way that distributes the forces on this entire area. This is for the purpose of making the mounting bosses withstand the forces that are exerted on this area. If you look on the inside, you'll see that this fastener threads through this undertail, this side panel, and into insert fastener on the taillight itself. So a bunch of plastic clamped together via screw. I needed to make sure that the whole mounting system can withstand the wind loading and also cyclic vibration loading of a license plate weight, along with any lighting equipment on here. So this is how this was designed. Let's head on over to the table, assemble our version of the license plate mounting hardware, and then put it back on the bike. Here on the table, I'm going to show you guys just how to configure the standard and also the Elite-1 adjustable fender eliminator, and then we'll just take one of these onto the bike and show how that mounts onto the bike, because at that point the steps are exactly the same. Now, what you see here in front of me is the module of the carrier boss that will carry either one of these on the bike. Notice here, this is the length of the similar screw, countersunk screw, that goes into the Undertail Closeout. In case you've mixed up all your hardware, just please take notice that the shorter ones rather than the long ones go with this carrier boss. That being said, those guys fit in here. Subsequently fasten this onto the bike. So this will be the last step. I will put those off to the side for now. These 2 Allen head screws will go either from the outside through the bracket, through the standard bracket, towards the inside through nuts, or from the inside to the outside to fasten this system onto here. All right, let's start with the simpler one. It's very simple here. This is what it shows up with. So we will flip this over, put a washer here, put the screw from the underside, and then if you notice here, we actually have precise cutouts here that make this connection toolless. We'll press this nut in there, use a 5mm Allen to start that connection. I engage the threads but do not go all the way down. I like to keep some adjustability here in this system. Again, screw, washer, bracket, boss, and then the nut from the inside. Now, before I tighten it down, I will show you guys how this is configured. We want to have these pointed sections towards the front of the bike and the angled bracket towards the rear. This will carry your license plate like this, and this will fasten to the undertail. Now, we do have a little bit of adjustability in the system here. What I'll do is just try to center it as best I can. The way this was designed was basically the width of the carrier boss is the width of this bracket, so you could pretty much just get that centered here and not on the bike. It'll be simpler just to do it here in hand. On this particular connection, we are using nylon locking nuts, so as you tighten this down, there will be no need for any thread locking agents. This is at this point good to go on the bike. If you are using a license plate light, it will route through this little window here, and then you will route this wire through the notches in the Undertail Closeout into the bike and connect it to the wires I showed you in the disassembly. Now, this gets placed here as a nice pass-through for the wire. The license plate closes this off, and only this portion shows through. It's very stealthy, very minimal, very bright. For the purpose of this installation, I'm going to keep it simple and just install this setup on the bike. I will dismantle this now and show you how to build this adjustable unit from the parts the way they come to you and how to fasten it to this setup. When you remove all the parts contained in the bag for this setup, it may look a little bit worrisome, but I will give you all the steps necessary to make this as simple as possible. Let's identify the components and see how I've separated them here. Here you have your hinges. If you notice, one side of the hinge is a straight surface and one is curved. The curved surface always goes to the rear of the bike. I'll show you how that gets configured. Here you have the small washers and the 6mm diameter screws with a button head. Those attach the L brackets to the hinges. Now here you have your L brackets. If you notice, these are mirror image components of each other. They are not the same part, so we need to arrange them appropriately. I like to lay them out on the table, sloping up. That enables me to configure all my stuff easily on the table and then just bolt it together. Now you have these countersunk screws that go through the flat bracket, through this L bracket, into the nut. Nuts are provided here. I've laid them behind this bracket here. So let's go ahead and arrange all our components properly. We will be fastening through the middle holes here. And this is what this will look like. For ease, I'll tell you guys why. We have these going through the washers, into the brackets, into the hinges, and then we have the flat bracket going onto the L bracket and all the hardware necessary to fasten those together. We will be using a 4mm Allen, 3mm Allen, and an 8mm box or open-ended wrench. And now I'll just demonstrate simply how to do this. Again, curved towards the rear. We do have a raised boss here that accepts the hole in the L bracket, washer, and screw. Now, it's very important to use a little bit of thread locking agent. I like to use the mid-strength blue. If you do not use this, you run the risk of vibration backing out your fastener, and you may lose your components, and that is an installation error not covered by warranty. Now when you get to the bottom here, make sure that you're not clamping the L bracket on top of the little raised boss. If there's a gap, you've clamped it on top. You need to make sure that it centers and the inside surface of the L bracket contacts the broader surface of the hinge. Now, I just get these down to the bottom lightly. We will be going through a adjustment of angle on the bike, so you don't want to get them too tight. Let's repeat the steps on this side. All right, like I mentioned before, we will be going through the middle holes. And this connection requires the 3mm Allen from the outside and an 8mm box from the inside. Again, we want to preserve adjustability. If you tighten it up too much, you'll have a hard time assembling it onto the carrier boss. Repeat for other side. These particular nuts have a nylon locking element in them, so they do not require any sort of thread locking agent. All right, so now we're back in this place. We still have adjustability side to side, and that will be necessary for fitting, proper fit on this carrier boss. These screws enable us to bolt these things together. We'll once again use medium strength thread locking agent. In this version, as opposed to going from the bottom up, we're going to go from the top down, just like that. 5mm Allen will do the trick here. Let's thread this up. And once again, I do not go all the way to the bottom. I preserve a little bit of adjustability. Just touch bottom and come back quarter turn. Now I have this hinge just a tad bit too tight, and it would require the top screw going in off axis. So I had to loosen it up a little bit to line it up properly. And now I have it on axis, and I could get that down. All right. Now this is pretty much built, just needs to be tightened up. If we just start cranking on one of these screws, chances are we will knock this system out of alignment and won't be parallel anymore, and then you can't adjust it. So we're gonna grab a 10mm open-ended wrench. And we will make sure that the hinge is held parallel to the center plane of the bike. Tighten this down. Tighten both sides down. Now we're going to check if we still have good hinge action, and in fact we do. I'm going to keep this hinge connection still loose for now. We're going to do a final adjust on the bike. Let's grab the countersunk screws that go through here and get this on the bike. We'll use a 3mm Allen on that. We can also take advantage of using a little bit of thread locking agent on the ends of these screws. Make sure that this doesn't come loose from its receiving fastener. And now we'll transfer this to the bike. And regardless of whether you're going with the adjustable or the simple standard one that I showed you in the beginning of this section, the rest of the assembly is exactly the same. If you are running a license plate light, it'll just route through the top side here, like I showed you on the standard setup. This is actually a little bit easier, again, getting clamped by a license plate. All right, let's hop on the bike. Let's now superimpose our holes coaxially here on the undertail. Get the fastener in place and carefully start that thread. Be careful not to cross thread this connection. I'm not going to go all the way tight. As you can see, I still have a little bit of play in there. Start threading up the other side. Now you can go ahead and bottom these out. If you've produced a big gap here, you can potentially close it together. This screw does clamp these two plastics in a sandwich style, so if you push this in, that gap will be relieved. I'll do this on both sides actually. All right, now we still have some adjustability in here, side to side, up and down. I'm gonna lock the hinges down later. After I get my license plate on this, we can get tightened down right away. 8mm from the inside, 3mm Allen from the outside, and the name of the game is just to get it centered. So the inner hole still shows a little bit of slot here, so if we just make the gap the same on both sides. We'll be good to go. Go ahead and tighten down on that. All right. Now let's go ahead and get our license plate on here. We could do that using the hardware that came off the bike originally, or if you've chosen one of our sets of anodized hardware, you can do that too. For this purpose, we'll have the anodized washer and the screw go through, larger washer on the inside, and the flange nut all the way on the inside. Before you tighten this down, if you are running a license plate light, you will route it through the top side here. Make sure these hardware sets are loose enough that you could slip this behind there. We do provide a double-sided adhesive strip there. It's a 3M high bond tape, super strong tape. I typically don't use it. I just clamp it down. I've never lost a light. So this is up to you. Get it centered, run the wires to the inside, but for this installation, we're really just showing the hardware, so that's all I'm gonna do. 8mm on the inside, 3mm Allen on the outside. Get this license plate centered. Tighten it down all the way. And now, using a 4mm Allen, we can lock down on the hinge. Obviously, you don't want this license plate sitting vertically. The travel of the suspension will end up hitting it, slamming it forward, bending your plate. That's not a good day for anyone. Let's go ahead and bring it back. You do have some adjustability within a range that is sensible. I tend to like my license plates on this angle, so I'm gonna go ahead and tighten it down in this orientation. And that's pretty much it here. I'm gonna jump up top and replace some of these components here, and we'll be good to go. If you guys are running license plate light and signals, now you'd be plugging them in. Again, that will be covered in a separate video. We are going to replace this bracket here. Make sure that the slot for the seat bracket is on the left side of the bike. Replace the screws that came out of this location. Use a 4mm Allen to tighten those down. That's pretty much it here. Let's replace the seat. All right, this bike is ready to go. As you can see, this is a pretty quick and painless installation. The results are beautiful. If you like what you see here, check out tstindustries.com. We have these parts available for you to purchase. We also have other parts for this bike and any other bike you may have in your stable. All right, guys, keep it safe. Thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one.